So I just did a video where I talked about the dumb, desperate, and dangerous women in society, and why it's important that you X all Pickmes out of your fucking life, even if they're related to you, because these bitches will be the ones to try and throw off and dysregulate your life because they feel threatened by you for whatever. Because your existence just kind of agitates their insecurities, and it highlights the fact that they don't have it just really your life just kind of highlights the fact that they don't have any standards, and that they're just kind of, and just how unfeminine they are, and not only just unfeminine. And honestly, I'm just gonna just X that out really quickly, because honestly, attacking a woman on her femininity or I don't really give a shit about any of that shit. All of that stuff is just ways to keep women in check in anyway. But I just did a video talking about that. But I could sit there and rag on women all day long, but at the end of the day, these women aren't natural. These women aren't. They're normal, but they're not normal because they're the default. They're normal because they are specifically created by patriarchal forces that want to subjugate um, and just keep women as as the resource that they are, as a resource that they view us as. Whether you like it or not, if you are born female, you are a resource to your country. You literally can't have a society without women. Like, we literally are the definition of civilization because of our wombs. Our wombs are a resource, and they are used by men for a number of reasons. But at the end of the day, this is what patriarchal conditioning is meant to do. It's all about reducing the power and reducing the influence of women so that we remain a resource that they can control. It's kind of like when you look at Africa and about how every time they begin to, develop in any way, the powers that be that surround them, in Asia and in Europe, come in and try to destabilize the countries. And that's because Africa is absolutely rich with resources. And what do you do with a place that's rich with resources? You fucking control it, because it's resources that are needed, like literally needed in order to power so much of what we like. That the resources in Africa power and I'm sorry, they just power the economies of not only surrounding nations but the globe. They power the globe. um, and it's the same thing when you are born female. Your resources, i.e. your womb, is it powers societies, economies, and the globe, and men view you as nothing more than a resource. Now, of course, these are the men at the extreme top. Like, these are the Rothschilds. These are the people that control and make or break countries. Now, on a lower level, of course, in everyday society, what you have are, especially in Western society, and specifically in America, what you have are, there's us, we go about our daily lives of, reproducing and, falling in love and all that other good shit. But at the end of the day, relationships are ultimately, they come second to what they really need. The powers that be need. And what they need is just manpower. They don't give a fuck about your happiness. They don't give a fuck if you ever find true love or not. They don't give a fuck about any of that shit. All they care about is whether or not you are a resource that is being used effectively. And that's honestly what economics is. Economics is kind of like the study of economics is the study of scarce resource. How to Economics is like the study of what's that word I'm looking for? Of the proper way to, manage scarce resources. And wombs are a scarce resource. And this is also part of why, the whole trans thing is becoming so big, and the reason why they're taking it mainstream. They need more men, and they need more just experimental bodies in order to do some more womb experimentation en masse, so that they can try and just find a way to. They just need to find a way to kind of, if the state could produce children without women. Honestly, I think men will get eliminated. People think that women are the ones that will be eliminated if the state didn't need wombs in order to create babies. But honestly, I think men would be the ones that get eliminated. But but at the end of the day, that's just a whole other topic. The point I'm making with saying all of this is that um, we little people at the bottom, we view dating and relationships and all this other stuff in a very simplistic way. But people at the top are making some very important and serious decisions. Um, and matter of fact, your happiness, not only is it not a priority um, when it comes to family planning at a country level, but it's also a bit of an impediment to their desires, because at the end of the day, if you aren't in the quadrillionaires club, if you aren't in the at the top echelons of society, you are nothing more than a resource. And people want to make sure that their resources are allocated in a uh, in the most useful manner as possible. And your happiness kind of impedes upon the state's ability to control your children and to control your to have control over you. um Hold on. And so where am I going with all of this? And so there's just certain things like, you guys, so if these past few years haven't if you haven't come across the word social engineering at all these past 2 years, you've probably been living under a fucking rock. Um, if social engineering is just not crossing your mind, like, I don't know what to I just don't know what to make of it. Like, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know, like, I don't know what drugs you're on that has you in the coma that you're in. But social engineering is how these countries operate and how they run. Um, and I was talking about these dumb, desperate, and dangerous pygmies. But once again, these women are not natural and they're not normal. These women, pygmies, are actually, the narrative is that pygmies are feminine. The narrative is that pygmies are in tune with their bodies. The narrative is that pygmies are mature, they're relationship oriented, they're the ideal woman. That is the narrative. Now the narrative is also that sugar is better for you than fat. That I'm just telling you, if these past few years haven't shown you that you need to stop depending on what these government organizations put out um, as guidelines for how you should live your life, for what you should how you should manage your health, and for what if you haven't learned to distrust the Fed and the government after these past few years, like, I don't know what drugs you're on, but they're powerful, and you're in la la land. Um, so yeah, there's been a lot of push. And this pushback really started once Black women decided that and this conversation is honestly going to be Black community focused and oriented, because and I'm going to definitely talk about other communities in general, because honestly this is happening on a general scale. Um, Racism and race in general, these are all just social constructs and legal fictions that the elites really couldn't give a fuck about. They're just tools used, deployed in order to, just kind of like just to manipulate um and to box in people so that you're easier to control. You can the further you slice up communities and the further you slice up people, the easier they are to control, because they become like isolated. And the further you isolate a variable, um, the easier it is to manipulate that variable. When there's too many things interacting with the variable, it becomes really hard to kind of get a it becomes really hard to standardize any type of it just becomes difficult to create standard treatments or standard modes of operations, or it becomes very difficult to even create laws or general ideas about a variable, because there's just too much at play there. But when you isolate a variable, you can learn things about it that you couldn't learn if it wasn't if it wasn't isolated, and if you it just kind of shows you what type of it's just a good way to do testing, and a good way to not only on a chemical level but on a human level as well. And if you eh, but yeah, so isolating a variable is really important. And these past 2 years have been all about isolating variables, isolating people, isolating resources. um, but I bring up all of this because I'm going to talk about I'm just trying to bring light to the agents of chaos, as I like to call them, that are part of the social engineering groups that are trying to isolate different variables in society, isolate where certain people should land on the uh, yeah, isolate where certain variables in order to determine where they should rank or where they should land. And if you allow these agents of chaos to wreak havoc and work in your life, you are going to find yourself in extremely unsavory and unfavorable conditions. Um, but let's just get a bit more specific and into that. The reason I made this video is because I've been having issues with pick-me's in my life. I shit. The reason I'm making this video is because the reason I'm making this. Hold on, I'm trying to test something out right quick. La 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 la. Okay. Well, I hope that helped. I don't even know. La la la. I don't know. Um, but the reason I'm making this video is because I've recently in my life had to deal with some serious harassment and gang stalking, and just absolute just horrible forms of psychological abuse. Um, and a lot of it was at the hands of men. But the reason these males had access to me is because the women in my community, the women that we know were my sisters, my just because women gave them access to me. Um, and basically, I had a fucking pick me, an unloyal ass pick me, try and fuck up my shit because she has her own insecurities. Um, and she can't, she just can't stand, the fact that I don't want her lifestyle. Like, I don't know. I really don't know what it is. Like, I seriously didn't hate this girl. I never thought of her as less than me or anything like that. But unfortunately, with pick-me's, these are women that are insecurity led. These are women that operate at a very bestial level, um, and these are women that they're just not all the way there. Um, and these bestial women, these she-males, they'll very much so try and fuck up your shit if they just feel threatened by your existence. Um, and the reason for this is because a woman that isn't secure, a woman that lacks security, like she does some very strange things. Security is very important for women, and when you are a woman whose security is dependent on things outside of you, instead of you cultivating a certain level of security in your life, so that no matter if a male is present or not, you are stable. Pick-me's, they don't really pick-me's kind of don't get me wrong, there are many professional pick-me's. There are very many women that have degrees, and they're very financially stable, but they're still pick-me's. But for the financially insecure pick-me, like, she's extremely dangerous because an unstable insecure woman is an unstable woman. um and that's because security is really important. It's just one of those important variables for really helping a woman to just kind of you know feel comfortable. A lot of women are operating from these positions of instability, um, and calling it normal or calling it their personality, when in reality they're dysregulated as fuck. and so are all the women around them, and so they just can't, it's kind of like being nose blind to your own bullshit. But me personally, I've never been nose blind to my own bullshit. I know when I'm dysregulated, and I know what the root cause of my dysregulation is. If I ever experience it, I'm very self-aware. The problem is, I deal with a lot of men and women. Specifically, let's get to men, because this video is about the men. I unfortunately have had the experience of running into a lot of men that are used to dealing with pick-me's. They're used to dealing with the women that aren't in tune with their physiology. These are women that are, once again, they're like she-males. They're willing to like they don't really have standards. And this is especially the case in the Black community. And so what happens when you have males that are used to dealing with low quality women because they've created a low quality space. Like, once again, this video is kind of really specific to the Black community, but the brown, no, honestly, the brown community is different, but the Black community, where it's a very low quality patriarch. And Chrissy said it best, honestly. Low quality patriarchs equal low quality women. You can always tell the quality of a patriarch by the quality of its women. Black men have established a very low quality. Honestly, I wouldn't even say they've established one. They were just given one because white men have just decided, like, you're a male, you should be like us, but unfortunately, you can't compete with us. But I mean, here's your you have a dick, so here's your honorary, your honorary male rights, but yeah, Chrissy said it best when she said that, low quality patriarchs equal low quality women. Now me, I'm honestly just kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? A fuck the patriarchy type of woman. Because, and here's the thing, a lot of women are really afraid of the whole idea of fuck the patriarchy because they think that that means that, oh my God, if we have equality between the sexes, then men won't be No, no, no. Like, I don't understand why people. It's really funny how becoming a feminist made me start caring about a man being a provider. Like, people seem to have this idea that that feminism is all about reversing things, um, and making sure that everyone gets the exact same treatment. No, sweetie. Feminism is not about making sure that we all get the exact same treatment. It's about making sure that we get the proper treatment. And men and women have different needs. Men and women have different hardships. Men and, like, I don't like, it's the most ridiculous thing ever. Like, people honestly think, oh, you're a feminist, so we could do 50-50 this thing. No, no, we can't. Because, bitch, I don't live in a fucking vacuum. I don't live in a post-patriarchal society. No. And especially considering I live in America, one of the worst societies to be a woman, one of the worst Western nations to be um, one of the worst modern and Western nations to be a woman in. I don't, like, it's just the most ridiculous shit that I hear come out of people's mouths about what you can obviously tell that they don't really know what feminism is, or that they haven't actually read a book on feminism or anything like that. They just come up with their own ideas and they just run with it. But no, there's nothing feminist about about being a pygmy. There's nothing feminist about 50-50. It's not. That's not feminist. I'm sorry. Um, I'm not sorry. But where I'm going with this is just that there are just certain differences in society, and especially in the Black community, that you're going to have to deal with if you are a woman of certain qualities. And I would actually call them natural and normal qualities, because unfortunately, the running narrative that Black men have normalized and have tried to, um, make mainstream and have actually successfully made mainstream is this idea of the proper woman being masculine. And what's interesting is that you would think that these pick-me's would be the epitome of feminine, but no, there's actually nothing more masculine than a pick-me. Pick-me's are they're operating in a very masculine space. That's the reason why I call them she-males. Um, and that's because, I always bring up, in the previous video, I brought up that example of how, in high school, I just and for most of my, early to late teenage years, I really wasn't sexually active. I didn't even have that many like sexual urges or anything like that. And I even to one point thought I was asexual because all these girls are having crushes on these little ass boys, and I'm just like, I'm not, I don't feel the same. And it went on like that for years. It wasn't until I was 19 and involved with a much older and much more mature male that I, finally my sexuality began to blossom. And I'm not saying that, uh, because people hear that shit that, oh, younger women like to date older men, and they think that we're talking about these men that are like gray foxes or these silver foxes. Like, bitch, don't nobody want a man with gray hair. Like, they literally, like, oh my god, like the shit that men try to pass off as desirable is so fucking crazy. Dad bods and gray hairs and wrinkly skin. Like, bitch, don't nobody want that shit, your geriatric ass. like honestly, God, no woman really wants to date a man that's 10 years her senior. No woman actually wants that shit. The only women that go for that shit are the desperate women and women that just don't have any options. This is the reason why you get a lot of poor women whoring themselves out. This is the reason why, when it comes to sex workers, so many of the women in the sex industry are women from sketchy backgrounds and just poor women. Um, that aren't protected. It's the reason why so much of the sex industry is made up of, black women and, minority women. That's because we are, the least protected group of women on this planet. And we've just learned to use our sexuality as a tool to get us what we need because we don't get to we don't get the we don't get the white girl princess treatment just by nature of being born like how they do. No, we gotta put out for that shit. We gotta do all this crazy shit just to be seen as deserving of security and respect. No one just offers security to black women. That's not normal. That's not natural. Some of us get it, but we're the exception. We're really the exception to the rule. Your average black woman is just thrown out into this world, and she just has to fend for, she just has to fight against the wolves. And unfortunately, it's because she typically grew up in a family that didn't offer her any security or protection the way families are supposed to. But even then, on the worst level, sometimes you have it in a community sense. And this is where we get to the black hole aspect of things. Because you see, men of other groups, you notice it in the media first. I don't know about if you guys have seen this movie, but it's actually my uncle's favorite movie. And honestly, I can see why. It's a pretty funny movie. But it's really interesting looking at the different types of media that, black men and white men and Latino men create and that they look up to and that become staples in their community. In the black community, coming to America is just kind of one of those, just one of those movies. And in the movie, what you have is an extremely wealthy man going to an extremely wealthy prince. He goes to America and he pretends to be poor in order to find his wife. Um, and the reason he just doesn't want to lead with his resources. And um, the reason he does this is ostensibly because he wants to find quote unquote true love. But it's really interesting to me how that reverberates into the culture so much. Black men are really like they just don't want to lead with their resources. They're very afraid to they just don't yeah, they're really about romanticizing the struggle and glorifying struggle love. This idea of a girl that loves to him while he's in a box, or sleeping in a rat infested apartment. Someone that's just going to overlook all of that, overlook, providing her all, men are, the black community likes to romanticize the idea of women foregoing their role of choosing who gets to bring their genes into the next, the next generation, and who gets to be, the father of their offspring. Like they're really interested in brainwashing women with this idea of just of not giving a fuck about one of the most important decisions you'll ever make in your life. Like who you attach yourself to. um you know they're just really like there's just so much media in the black community that just kind of really perpetuates this idea. And so what you have is you have a lot of women running around here getting pregnant for bum ass men, um, because these men who, I'm sorry, we don't live in a matriarchy. I don't care what anyone says. The black community is not a matriarch. It's still a patriarch. It's just a low quality one. Um, but at the end of the day, we just have a lot of men and women creating these really broken and unstable homes, um, where their offspring become uh, it, they just romanticize these really sick and deplorable relationships that just wound up trapping women and children in poverty. And what that does is it just fulfills, the prison labor, army, and consumer quotas that, those larger and more powerful entities that I brought up earlier in the video, are looking for. You are sitting there as a regular human being, just, oh, I just want to be in love. I just want to make a baby, blah, 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 blah. But you don't realize the larger forces that are at play in this society. And you got to think about things sometimes. Sometimes you got to look at the full picture. You are not living every day in the full picture. You're just living, you're just your you're just your piece of grain in the sand, on the beach. But sometimes, you can look at things from a granular level, and other times you got to look at the whole beach. And if you take a look at the whole beach when it comes to relationships, at the end of the day, your womb and your body is nothing but a resource to these elites. And if you don't play your cards right, you're just going to be one of the women used um, as a breeder for, the next poverty generation, the next, um, yeah, just the next generation of people and children damned to, be in poverty. And even if they do get out of poverty, I mean, how many of the people that get out of poverty, they have these life crippling anxieties and mental conditions. Give me a second. Hey. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks, Ma. Yeah. But yeah, if you do not play your cards right, you're just gonna be used as fodder for these elites and their plans of making sure that they have enough people to fill these quotas on prison labor, these quotas for the army, these quotas for consumers, these quotas for people that are in this childlike hyper dependent state. um, and it's not to say that you can't get out of those things, but it's just, it's really it's easier to avoid quicksand than to find ways to get out of it. Prevention is honestly the greatest. um yeah, prevention is the greatest. Prevention is greater than sorry, I had a notification. Okay, so yeah, prevention is the greatest medicine. Prevention is better than medicine. If you can just avoid some shit, it's honestly way better than having to get through that shit. People say, oh, the struggle builds character. The struggle up to a point. I am one of the people who, I had this one saying in my life, people were like, sleep is the cousin of death, but I don't say that. I'm the type of person that says that comfort is the cousin of death. Because when you're comfortable, you don't really feel the need to move. You don't really feel the need to do this or do that. When you're comfortable, you just don't have that much drive. When you are comfortable, you don't feel the need to do much of anything. Um, and when you have large aspirations in life, comfort can really weigh you back. But I don't mean comfort in the sense of stability. Like people have really weird ideas of what comfort is. Stability should be a given. Stability is something that allows you to, propel further. Having a foundation under you, that's not comfort. That should be a given. A lot of us, especially those of us from more humble origins, we'll sit there and we'll really rag on ourselves because we're wondering why we don't have this or why we aren't like this when some of the other people in our environments are in these certain are just in certain better positions and things like that. You got to understand, some people were given stability and a foundation, and that shit will literally change your fucking life. Having stability and a strong foundation are integral, like absolutely integral to things like success. Um, Meaning that your odds are just extremely low of achieving most levels of success if you don't have it. And unfortunately, something that a lot of, and this is the reason why I fucking hate rich people, and not just rich people, but middle class people too. And I don't just hate middle class white people, Asians, or or higher. I also hate middle class black people because they're literally just like those ignorant as fuck middle class other people. And the reason why I have so much hatred for them is because something that I learned when I changed class levels is just how much these people romanticize the struggle themselves. They literally romanticize, in the instability, the craziness of poverty. Like they just romanticize the fuck out of that shit. They romanticize the ghetto. They romanticize the stupidity and the ignorance, and you're just and they defend it so fucking much. They haven't had to deal with that shit. That shit isn't a reality for them. But man, do they just love it. And they really like, I made this one video about how your life is just entertainment to them. And in that video, I talked about Lamilton, this little ghetto ass boy who obviously was growing up in an unstable home environment that led him to doing just some extremely ratchet and just, uh dumbass shit that got him, internet popularity because it was just one of those things that was just so crazy, and you can't help but laugh. But unfortunately, due to the large amounts of just positive kind of positive backlash he received for his actions, this boy, and honestly, depending on his home life, he probably would have, there's a good chance he might have wound up, in that situation anyway, um, whether he would have gotten the positive attention or not. But at the end of the day, the positive attention didn't help. And so what you have are these you just have a lot of people that come from humble beginnings that become really attached to, it's like their trauma becomes their identity. Because to people that don't have your problems, watching you behave in such sporadic or just crazy ways, like it's just all funny to them. It's all entertainment to them. It's all interesting. It's just interesting and cool, and oh my god, look at that youth and the vitality, and it makes you feel, they feel alive watching you feel become less alive, because operating in that fight or flight state constantly, like that shit'll fucking kill you. um that shit will unalive you. But these elites, like, they love that shit. They're just really into that shit. And they watch you struggle, and they're just like, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and you're just like, fuck you, sir, fuck you, ma'am. Because at the end of the day, these people really don't give a damn. You're just entertainment. You're just yeah, it's just all entertainment to them. um Matter of fact, they wish they had your problems. They wish that, and some of them even go so far as to try and, leave their families and leave their all this other good shit. But at the end of the day, they have something you don't have, which is if shit goes south, they can call on mom and dad. If shit goes south, they went to a school full of children that were actually going some places and that actually became something, and so they have a better network than you do. They have all these different resources at their disposal that they don't really consider resources, but actually are. These other groups of people have entire communities at their disposal. While when you're black, you don't have that, especially when you're black and poor. And it's just one of the things that disgusts me the most about my time spent at these different class levels. And when I talk to certain groups of people that are just like, oh, it's so inspiring. It's like, I get what you're saying, but shut the fuck up, please. Like I literally, like, I just can't stand certain just certain people in well-to-do situations, because I just the romanticization of your struggle is just so gross to me, because this shit isn't it's not cute, it's not fun, it's not like, you literally have to be absolutely exceptional just to, you know getting out of poverty requires you to be extremely exceptional, because it's just not an easy feat at all. It's not easy at in the slightest. um but I'm digressing. Where I'm going with this is that yeah, well, actually, that kind of helps me segue into my point, which is that there are people out here who will utilize the stories of, and that's something that I'm gonna make sure that if I'm gonna make it in life, like I am, like I'm going to achieve my dreams, like I'm hell gunning for, I don't give a fuck how long it takes, I'm gonna achieve my dreams. But something I'm gonna make sure never happens to me is I'm never gonna be used by these elites as some type of success story, because that's just that shit that I just don't care. I don't give a fuck. No, I'm not self-made. I'm a product of everyone that ever believed in me. No, I didn't pull myself up out of bush. No, 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 no. This shit was fucking, a lot of it was luck. A lot of it was, my work ethic and things like that. But but what I'm really trying to, like, I'm just not going to set people up with these weird ass unrealistic standards, because that's just not how it works. No one gets anywhere in this world on their own. No one gets anywhere in this world doing shit by them. That's just, no. Nobody's self-made. That shit's a fucking lie, and it's a lie that rich people tell you just so that they have clout, when in reality they had entire communities at their disposal. And if you are a woman and you allow these lying ass males to do what they do best, which is, whisper sweet nothings in your ear, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're just trapped, and not just you, but your offspring are trapped in extremely undesirable positions that wound up doing more harm to them than good. I don't care what anyone says. If you don't have peace of mind, you really have nothing. And there are children walking around here with, heads so heavy because of, a lifetime or decades spent, being in extremely, disgusting situations. The kind that don't build character, they're the kind that destroy character. Um, and that's something really disgusting, and that these elites can't tell the difference between. Elites think that all struggle builds. No, it doesn't. Only certain kinds of struggle build, and it's typically the struggle of a social struggle, a social discomfort. And what I mean by that is, if everyone in your environment is gunning for top schools, you're probably going to be somebody that wants to gun for a top school too, and is going to try to study hard and work hard. But if everyone in your environment is, doping up and doing drugs and shit like that, you're probably not going to feel that motivation to do more with your life. Being being isolated from resources, especially the social kind, that's kind of like a death sentence. But let me stop. A death sentence for your dreams. I have really gotten off track of this video. Um, which is on the topic of the men who create these dumb, desperate, and dangerous women. So in the previous video, I was talking about how um, about just about these women, but here I wanted to talk about how their state isn't really natural. And not only is it not natural, but it's in no way, shape, or form like the ideal version of what a woman should be that the Black community has is a woman that is absolutely not ideal at all for doing things like building a community or for creating a healthy family. The ideal woman that they have in mind and that they keep putting out there is actually a woman that is ideal for exploitation, and a woman that is ideal for trapping in poverty and using her kids once again as fodder to meet these prison, army, and consumer quotas. Um, that I this ideal woman that they keep on talking about, and that they keep juxtaposing, or that they keep using as kind of like a battle between the modern woman and the ideal woman. There's a lot of backlash on the internet right now talking about this idea of modern women. And just to be clear, the backlash is extremely, of course, misogynistic. The backlash is, of course, extremely um, just stupid. And what it's meant to do is it's just meant to trap the most naive and dumb women, and to shame naive and dumb women into into settling for less. What they're really trying to do is convince women to stop trying to get more out of life. Um, because what they really don't want is they don't want a strong network of women. They don't want they just don't want that, because that would challenge the stronghold that men have over society and over their resources. And once again, like, whether you like it or not, as a female human being, you are nothing but a resource. We're all resources, to be honest, but at the end of the day, men are resources in other ways. And I stated this in another video, and I'll state this again here. The sacrifices that men make, it gets rewarded with things like power, and respect, and authority. And there's some type of reward that these men receive for their sacrifices. But as a woman, when you make when you sacrifice yourself for your country, it's seen as matter of fact. It's seen as just a thing to do, and you don't get more authority from it. You get less. It's all meant to limit you. Whenever women make sacrifices, they become more limited. Whenever men make sacrifices, they become less limited. This is why when men get families, their earning power goes up, while when women get families, it goes down. This is because, first of all, just being a homemaker, you're going to be out of the, like, this is just, it's pretty normal. But the reason why I paint it in such a negative light is because these weak ass males that don't want to provide, these weak ass males that don't want to, protect their little castle that they're supposed to be lord over, they'll see that as a problem. They'll see you being more needy in some of the most vulnerable years of your life as a turn off. These weak ass males hate that shit. And it's pretty fucking gross. Like, it's really gross. Just how fucking weak these men are in society. And this also goes back to why the Pickme is so important. The lower the quality of males, you have to begin dropping the quality of women, because men just don't. With these weak ass males that we have today, they don't want to compete. They don't want to try. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to lead with anything. That's because these men have no resources. These men have no they have no plans. They have no ambitions. They have none of that shit. Um, and they feel like you as a woman are somehow uh asking for too much when you're demanding to have a partner that can foot the bills when you are you know when you're doing when you just enter that homemaker phase of your life. um and and what's craziest about these males is that instead of trying to create a society where they can, be given some relief by, maybe voting for more quote unquote socialist programs, like increasing paternal leave, um, or creating paternal leave, and maybe creating these systems and programs that are meant to, that'll help support the family. No, it's like they men want their cake and to eat it, and eat it too. They don't want to do anything to create social programs that might benefit mothers and the family. They want women to be dependent on them and not the state, but they don't want to have women depending on them. Like, I want to be the rock in the relationship, but don't lean on me. Like, what the fuck, bitch? Like, get your own shit. Like, what are you doing? Like, they want to be seen as dependable just because they're male and not because of anything that they do. Once again, that coming to America mentality. They don't want to while in other media that other men have, you'll see men going, man, I like that girl, and he'll sit there and he'll invent this, or he'll do that, or he'll go out into the world and just make himself the most attractive partner that he can, and then go back for that girl that he loves, and it's just like willing to beat up whatever boyfriend she's got, and just take the place. um but in the black community, no, there's none of that. These men are going to pretend like they're broke and poor, and if you don't love them at their lowest, they don't want you at their like it's just like literally like relationships in this day and age are all about low effort and low quality. I'm not gonna, I mean, why should I and I get a lot of backlash from feminists because of my own perspectives on this. But because it happens both ways, honestly. But you'll have a lot of women doing things like, oh my gosh, like you pick out your outfits based on what your guy likes. Like, what on earth? Like, okay, maybe I want my guy to be attracted to me. Like, I don't know. Like, there's just and then men with their whole something like, oh my god, you provide for your girl. Oh, like, how dare you actually treat her with human decency and respect? How dare you treat her like she's special to you? Why would you do that to your female partner? What the fuck? You just supposed to fuck her and then move on with your life. You're not like, it's just extremely low quality. Like, oh my gosh, the internet is just filled with such low quality advice from such low quality men. And the only women that are actually hearing that shit are low quality women themselves. And unfortunately, once again, I just went through a past few years of my life of having my Pickme sisters trying to destabilize me and fuck up my shit. And they do it with a smile and say it's with love, but no, what they're doing is just working in tandem with the male that's obviously there's a power imbalance there that's just driving them fucking crazy. I don't know what the fuck is their problem. I really don't. But at the end of the day, um, these pygmies are operating from a very unnatural state. And by unnatural, I just mean in a state that's really just not, like, it doesn't benefit anyone, not even themselves. And for humans are naturally inclined to operate in a way that benefits them, if no one else. But pygmies don't even operate to benefit themselves. It does not benefit a woman to be it does not benefit a woman to chase a man. It does not benefit a woman to have a baby with a guy that just speaks promises in her ear and doesn't do anything to actually fulfill that. It doesn't benefit a woman to be with a low quality male. It doesn't benefit her in any way at all. And these women, honestly, these pygmies operate at a level that is just antagonistic to them and their own desires and needs. It's like they're brainwashed, and that's because they are. And who are they brainwashed by? Agents of chaos that are working for the patriarchy. And these are men whose job it is to dysregulate and to cast fear and doubt into the hearts of young women so that they limit themselves, so that, once again, these people are trapped um, in these destructive cycles that help out the elites while they just live in misery. Because once again, like, and the reason why I went on that little tangent earlier in the video is because once again, you guys gotta understand something. Your happiness, your health, and your security, none of these things mean absolutely anything to people that are at the top, because at the end of the day, unhappy people tend to make rash and dumb decisions that wound up benefiting them. And not only that, but it also limits the amount of competition that they have. You know, I brought up how, I think I brought up in this video, but maybe it was the last video too. Maybe I brought up how in East Asia, there's just such an abundance of quality parenting happening in that country. And something that you'll notice is that the competition there is so fucking high. This is even a case in some Western nations, in Europe. The competition is pretty fucking up there. And that's because they have states and they have countries and they have just people in positions of authority that actually the people demand that um their representatives offer them a quality life. In America, we're just a little too dumb for that. And we're getting stupider, and they're really working hard to make sure that we don't ever get to a point where we demand similar. But because, oh, that's Marxist, or oh, that's socialist, it's like, shut the fuck up. Certain things I can understand, but other things I'm a little about. uh you know but yeah, it just doesn't. um your your happiness and your security and your health, they've just come to realize, they, as in those people at the top, have just come to realize that they really don't factor. They're just not a factor in the bottom line, which is profit. um your happiness doesn't provide them with greater profit. They only need a certain, number of people being happy you know in order to maintain or even push beyond certain standards. They don't really like, they want to keep low quality labor and workers at a higher amount than is necessary, so that things stay in their favor. Not too high, because if it's too high, then eat the rich becomes a thing. But if it's just high enough, we'll spend all of our time, like crabs in a, like once again, with crabs in a bucket, you can't have too many in a bucket, because if you do, then it's easy to get out. Just you crawl up there and you can just jump on out. But if you have just enough in there, it's like none can escape. And that's what these men are doing. They're just creating archetypes for people to model themselves after, and they're creating guidelines for people to follow that do nothing to actually offer you happiness and health and prosperity. Because if it did that, then who the fuck would be flipping their burgers, and who the fuck would be, filling the prisons and, the army and buying up all this shit? Like, you got to look at things from that perspective sometimes. And that's what these guys do. This is their whole MO, you know. And it's gross. Yeah, it's really, really gross. But at the end of the day, um, just be wise. Just be wise. That's all you got to do. Cassandra Mack, she's on here. Cassandra Mack Ministries. She does great content. And she had this one quote that she got from the Bible, and it's like, you're instructed to be as wise as a serpent, but you just want to be as wise as, you don't want to be a snake, but you want to be as wise as a snake. You don't want to be a terrible person, but you want to have the wisdom that terrible people have. And the reason why you want that is just for the protection against them. Um, and unfortunately, when it comes to the society, you got a lot of fucking idiots that can't tell the difference between the serpent and someone who's just wise as a serpent. But point is, you just want to be hip to the game. And you need to be, as especially as a woman, you need to be hip to the game that these men are trying to play and run on you guys. There's nothing wrong with give me 1 second. But yeah, as a woman, it's extremely important, especially if you're a vulnerable woman. And in my vulnerable woman, I define that as minority women that are in poverty. If you, especially if you are or not even just in poverty, but that don't have a network of support. And 9 times out of 10, these are women in poverty, but also middle class young women as well. Um, but yeah, if you're a vulnerable woman, it really is important that you become hip to the game that these males are trying to run on you guys, because if you're not, you will just like it's just gonna fuck up your life in ways that you can't even imagine. um and you gonna survive, you'll survive for sure. But it's like, who the fuck wants to have some of these problems? Like, there's just certain problems you just don't want to have. You don't need to experience everything you know in order to know this, that, and the third. Like, I don't need to be burned by fire before I recognize that it's bad. Like, I don't need there's just certain experiences you don't need to have. And that it would honestly be best to avoid, um knowing by experience instead of just knowing by listening. And this is especially the case when you're a vulnerable woman, because there's just so much. It's just knocks from life will hit you down a lot harder when you're a vulnerable woman than when you are a protected woman. And that is because a lot of that has to do with the fact that fiscally, protected women can take a hit. Like, it's just when it comes to just the whole idea of being able to take a risk. People from financially secure backgrounds that have mom and dad to fall back on, it's a lot easier for them to take a large financial risk because at the end of the day, I can just fall back on mom and pop's couch. But if you're someone who's home, if you're someone who grew up where it didn't matter, like, every home you ever lived in, is gone. There's really nothing for you to fall back on. So you have to be a lot more calculated. You have to be a lot more careful, because a mistake when you're an unprotected woman, that could literally be your life. Like, that shit can be a life sentence. Um, and that's honestly the major difference between, children that grow up in supportive environments and children that don't. And that is that you just wound up being in a situation to where your mistakes can either be lessons or they can be life sentences. um and it's just really difficult. I'm not saying that, when you most mistakes you make in life, you can and you will move on from, you will survive them. But at the end of the day, who wants to be a survivor? Being stuck in survival mode, like, that's not, no one wants to be a fucking survivor. I don't want to be a survivor of this and that and the third. You know, I don't want to be a survivor. I don't want to be yeah, there's just certain things that are really unsavourable and that are really unbecoming, and that are just really you just don't want those type of problems. And you really need to be hip to the game that these men are running because they're trying to give as many women problems as possible. And if you get caught up, you will that shit'll be like a life sentence for you. And they're doing this shit on purpose. Like it's very much so being done on purpose. Um, and and this is especially the case in the Black community. Very much so, especially the case here. Um, Once again, unfortunately, as is the case with most Black males, they are Black men want to dominate female spaces. They're very much into just being a part of the female world. And the reason why they're so intent and so enthralled with that world is because they can't compete with men in more masculine spaces. And once again, these spaces are masculine and feminine not because they inherently are, but because they're just the way it's just the way that society is structured at the moment. Um, you know, so and examples of that, and I really like these internet aunties. They do such a great job of putting these things into perspective, and with that, I mean, they do such a great job of showing you exactly um of just kind of bringing home this point. You got other groups of men that are working on getting to the fucking moon, but what are Black men doing? They're worrying about what weave you're wearing, and you know, and how much you make and all this other bullshit. Like it's just with other groups of men, like they're just more interested and more involved in other things. Um, but unfortunately, that's not the case with Black men. Black men are very much so involved in predominantly female spaces. And once again, this is because they just can't compete with other men. And and not only that, but they also view women as their competition. Black men are competing with women for spots and for spaces. And I talked about in my previous video about how in certain colonies, I forgot which ones, but in certain groups, when a male realizes that they can't compete with the dominant male, they'll pretend like they're females in order to be so that they're less considered less of a threat, and so that they can just blend in and have the resources of the dominant male without having to fight him for them. So yeah, it's just a way for him to have access to resources without having to challenge the male. He'll literally become like a female, not necessarily or forego a sex change, but like he'll just take on the appearance of and the nature of a woman. And this is kind of what Black men do. Um, because they can't compete with other groups of males, they kind of just they just adopt more feminine principles, uh, just more predominantly feminine ideas and things like that, and occupations, because at the end of the day, they just can't cut it. And they just can't handle having another man as competition. Um, but oh yeah, they'll compete with women all day long. They'll fight women. They'll do all this other shit in spaces where they feel like they can dominate. And once again, it's really unfortunate. But at the end of the day, like white supremacy is a bitch. Um, but that's not an excuse at all, because at the end of the day, at the end of the day, um, Black women have it far worse than Black women, and yet we are, generation after generation, just making exponential strides. Um, and we're just more oriented towards growth, while Black men are more oriented towards destruction and destroying any growth. Like it's just really gross how effeminate and just how weak um, so much of the Black male population is. Um, and yeah, that's just if you let them, you will be trapped by some of these weak ass males. Um, and the worst thing a woman can do is attach herself to a weak man. It really is the worst. Because these men don't view you as a partner. They view you as a threat or as a provider yourself. Like they can yeah, it's just a dynamic that really just, and especially when these weak ass males get with feminine women, like they recognize, they get to a point where they go, damn, I can't cut this masculinity thing. I can't cut. I ain't built for this shit. And they will sabotage you and the life that you have. And I've watched that happen to women. These men sit there and they walk the talk and all that other good shit. They talk the talk and they walk the walk. But when it really comes down to it, especially when it comes to consistency of maintaining that, they can't. And they wound up destroying their families and destroying the woman because, one thing that they really don't want is for, you know, some other man to come in and upshow him. He doesn't want his failure. Like, a broken home is honestly a failure on behalf of the man. Like, it really shows you that your average woman, she is really relationship oriented, especially in the black community. The black community is chocked to the brim with pick-me's and women that would literally destroy their sister, that would kill their sister just to get some dick. Like, the black community is filled to the brim with that type of shit. And so these men have absolutely no shortage of options. It's just once again, it's just one of those issues where even then, uh this is part of why they feel so okay with abandoning a failed relationship, because one, they know that they have some sort of options, and two, although they might have options, it's not quality options, because men like to sit there and pretend like being a baby daddy or abandoning a woman doesn't reflect on them poorly. But I don't know why people always look to celebrities for how they should lead their life. But no, sweetie, these men are in the everyday world. Being a guy like that kind of just knocks you down a peg, and you're only going to be relegated to some really low quality women. Only low quality women are ever going to put up with your ass and put up with your shit. Um, and you won't have access to the same caliber of women as you once did. Um, and that's where their frustration comes in with them, and that's the reason why a lot of these men are really dangerous, because they get really frustrated when they can't have the type of woman they want. Um, and that leads to more bullshit. But yeah, this rant is just about yeah, this video is just about you know the weak males that create weaker women because their pride won't allow them to have a woman by their side that's stronger than them. And not only does their pride not allow that, but honestly, it's not a great deal for a woman. Like, the idea, because ever since feminism became a thing, women have literally just taken on the responsibilities that are expected of women and the responsibilities that are expected of men. Like, we've literally just doubled our workload. And it's the reason why I tell people all the time, first of all, that wasn't feminism. Or what I mean by that is, it's not, once again, these 50-50 or these extremely equal situationships, like, that shit isn't feminism. That's not a prerequisite to being a feminist. If you're a feminist who does that, that's cool and all, but that's not it's not feminist. Like, it doesn't make me less of a feminist because I want a provider male. No, I recognize it. Like, we're not in a post-patriarchal society. People want women and expect feminists to operate as if they exist in a post-patriarchal society when we don't. I don't have the same supports. I don't have the same safety nets. I don't have the same professional networks. I don't have the same any of the networks that men have that put them in a position to where they can fuck around for I don't know how many years, and then at 35 decide to get their shit together and then be just fine. I don't, that's just not how that's just not the world I live in. Um that's not the world any of us live in. And there's so much pressure. Like, once again, I'm talking about men and women and things like that, but of course the overall theme of this whole channel is gang stalking and moving on from that. And um and in my experiences, I've literally dealt with so much psychological abuse just because I'm a woman who wants to explore her options, um before I decide to, commit my life to something, whether that's a career or a person, or like, people just really, I have this video on my channel about people that, anxious attachment and the demonization of explorers. And that's because people really don't fucking, they just don't ever want women to make conscious decisions. They want you to make all of your major life decisions, um especially if you're a woman, when you are extremely young. When you are between the ages of 18 and 24, they want you to choose your career. They want you to get married and knocked up, or at least if you're not married, get knocked up or something. At least have one baby by the time you're 25. Like, you should have been in a serious relationship, and then that relationship either succeeded or ended by the age of 25. Like, and whether it succeeded or ended, you should be a baby mama of some type. Um, there's this really big push on extremely young and immature females to make major life commitments, because we're operating on this scale of, we have to do everything before 30. Everything has to be done before 30. If I'm 27, I have to spend, at least a year getting to know the guy, and then we got, like, everything is before 30, before 30, before 30. It's like, shut the fuck up. Like, you don't have to, this is all just fear mongering and excuses meant to, it's just all meant to scare women into limiting themselves, when in reality most people become established, like, fully, like, your 30s are that period of, like, if you've been working in your 20s, you become finally really established in your 30s, like, you know and in your 30s, whatever you didn't do in your 20s, now is the time for you to really, really do that shit in your 30s, but from a place of wisdom and more financial security. Like, people, they start, a lot of people start businesses in their 30s, their mid, 30s. A lot of people, they get into investing and all this other crazy shit that women just aren't into, because too many of us are playing fucking house at 25 instead of, getting our shit together and then playing house. And this society and this culture, these men, especially these net men, these net beards, they will work extremely hard to scare women out of establishing themselves before getting into relationships and before playing house. And the reason they do this, once again, it all goes back to the larger picture here, which is that they need bodies to fill quotas, and they can't have too many people in the ruling class. No, 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 no. But if you aren't smart, you'll get caught the fuck up and wound up being, a statistic, and just your children being used for, as as a body to meet those quotas. Um, and you know what? Each person has their own limits, or their own standards and whatnot. And look, if not wanting to be in poverty and a baby mama makes me bougie or whatever, then call me bougie. Je peux pas français, donc si tu veux, oui, oui, je suis bougie. Like, I don't give a fuck. Um, yeah, yeah, I'll be a part of the bourgeoisie. I don't care. I don't give a fuck. Like, je m'en fous. Je m'en fous. I do not care. But yeah, that's all I want to make this video on. Watch out. These niggas ain't shit, and they will trap you. Listen to your internet aunties, and not the ones that are painting everything in pink. You guys, once again, and I talked about this briefly in that past video, and I know this video is supposed to be about males, but unfortunately, these men want masculine women. They want women that are going to fight. They want women that are going to, you know, uh, be with them in the trenches. These are the type of men that are creating these pygmies. They're putting on a pedestal women that are going to be in the trenches with them, women that are going to, pop out a baby and then be back to work. And that's the shit that they want. They saw their mamas do it, and so as far as they're concerned, when they saw their mamas doing it, that meant not, let me make sure that the woman in my life doesn't have to go through it. No, it's, if my mama did it, you can do it too. It's, it's gross as fuck. And these are these weak males that want to create these unstable environments for you and your offspring to exist in. And look, for some women, especially women that have a lot of community support, like once again, um, white women get to operate with a little bit more freedom because they have healthier communities overall, so their households can be a little bit this or that. Um, But at the end of the day, and not only that, but then it comes to the media that white people consume is so much more wholesome and so much more it just really motivates you. Once again, it puts that social pressure on you to achieve more. Once again, with my example of being in a community where everyone is a bunch of business owners versus being in a community where everyone's a bunch of baby mamas or baby daddies and in debt, like that puts two different types of drives in people. That's two different forms of social pressure. And even if your mom and dad did fuck up and your dad has you living in a fucking trailer park, but you're going to the local school, which is and you get to, every day you come home and you're watching movies about Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and all this other bullshit. That motivates you, and you're around kids that are aware of these things and all of these. Your community support and your community and the imagery you consume. It's all so much more wholesome and supportive, and it pushes you in a different direction than the direction of a kid, who's born in this is the reason why I was born in like a ghetto or some shit like that. And this is the reason why, even when it comes to, some certain middle class or even, upper class black kids, because the media representation and the stories that we tell each other aren't exactly the most wholesome and most motivating, even these black children that are born in healthier environments still struggle or still do poorly. And that's because the social pressure for them, it just isn't there in the same way. They're not consuming the same stories with characters that look like them. They're not, like, nothing is really put there in order to resonate with them. Um, but but yeah, don't let these weak ass men and women trap you. Don't let them do it, especially not these weak ass men, because they're the ones pedestalizing, that army bitch. They're the ones pedestalizing that hyper masculine female that goes after her man, and she grabs his dick and she drags him to the bedroom, and and she fucks him, what. And hey, it is what it is. I like to, how you want to get down is how you get down. I ain't judging nobody, but all I'm saying is that it's unfortunate, like, as a woman, like, you, especially as a black woman, you have just so many effeminate and weak males that are trying to baby mama you, and you don't. Stay away, run away, run away. You don't want those problems. um yeah, you don't want those problems.